G'day everyone. This is the second video from the Crochet for Absolute Beginners series. The second video will be about how to crochet in a row from your foundation chain. The foundation chain is what we learned in the first video. So I'll switch the camera around to my hands so we can get started. So in the first video, we learned how to begin the work from scratch, which was a slip knot, hold your work with the tension, okay, and make your chain stitches, round yarn round hook, pull up a loop, yarn round hook, pull up a loop, find your V stitches. See the V's? Kind of. So now we're up to video number 2, where we learn what to do with this chain. If we want to do rows along as opposed to working round in a circle, which is a whole other story, we first need to know where to crochet into, which is why I told you to find those V's. Now, as you can see, this chain stitch here has 3 little strands to it. So you've got the top loop, the bottom loop, and that middle one. See that one right in the middle here. So there are 3 ways you can work into it. Firstly, the reason I'm working into this one and not this chain is that when you work, so you never work into the first chain from the hook unless the pattern says so. We'll work in the second chain from the hook because the size of the stitch I'm going to make is going to be about 1 chain size in height. If I was going to make a stitch that was taller, I'd probably work into this chain or this chain, depending on the stitch. So I'll teach you the anatomy of a stitch in a minute. Firstly, we'll just go from here. We've chosen the second stitch from the hook. We can work into the top loop, the bottom loop, or the middle one. Now, I usually like to work into the top loop. Where you work into will change the look of this first row and this edge here. Now, when I was watching these beginner videos, something they didn't tell me was if I don't evenly choose which part of this chain stitch to work into each time along this foundation chain, I will end up with a lumpy, kinked looking chain, and it won't be an even look and work. So most people, I guess, would normally go into both that middle bar, the back bar, the middle bit, I think they call it the back bar of the chain, and the top loop. So I'll go into, so I'll poke into that bit there. So I've got both of those. You can see both those pieces of the chain there on my hook, and the other piece is underneath. Yarn round hook, pull up a loop. Now you've got 2 loops on your hook, yarn round hook. Remember, the direction matters of the yarn around the hook. See previous video for information. Pull up, pull through both loops, and that is what is called a single crochet stitch in the USA, or a double crochet in Australia or the UK. Just to confuse you a lot. So be wary of what crochet language the pattern you're using has been written in. So another single crochet, I'll show you it again, go through that poke into that bit, so that these two lines, sure, are above the hook. Poke it there. Yarn round hook, pull up a loop. You have 2 loops on your hook. Yarn round hook, pull through both loops. And I like to use the US terminology, but no, I'm from Australia, because to me the single crochet, calling that a single crochet makes most sense, because when I show you what a double crochet is, well, I don't know which one makes more sense. Whatever works in your mind, I guess. But we will be using just the one stitch type along the row, because if you use different stitch types along the row, it can change the tension of the row. So usually just choose one type to go all the way along, unless it's a certain, unless the pattern says a certain stitch type requires it. So now we never crochet into that slip stitch at the start. It never counts as a stitch, so I'll just tighten him off. Got one more stitch to crochet into, one more chain, foundation chain stitch to crochet into. So I'll go find, so you got to find him, got to find the bits of the chain. See the V, you can kind of see it, V shape, the top and the bottom loop. You've got the middle loop somewhere behind there. You poke in, whoa, let's see if I can get it. A bit fiddly sometimes when you're working into the I have to tell you some troubleshooting tips too. Let me just finish this row. Whoops, 2 loops, pull up a loop. There you go, first row done. Yay! That's what it looks like if you've worked into the main part of the chain. It gives this kind of starting pattern, starting row. Now I'll just I'll show you some troubleshooting. This is another thing I didn't like about other videos that I was watching online, is that they didn't tell me when I was making a mistake. So I just happily kept going along with bubbly, lumpy work, not knowing that I was even making a mistake. Okay, so I just pulled the stitches back, and in the crochet and knitting community, they call it frogging it, because you rip out the stitches, ribbit. Okay, it'll make more sense once you start ripping out lots of stitches after making a big mistake. Okay, so one mistake that can happen here is you can go into your chain. You can make your stitch, and then you can't find which is the next chain to go into. Now, there is this big, beautiful lump there where it looks like, that looks like the next place to crochet into. I'm going to go in there, but that's going to give you a big lump, because you're just going to keep putting more stitches into the same first chain. You want to go on to the next chain in the row. That's this guy here. Now, sometimes, especially if you've got a very long chain of foundation chain stitches, it can twist, and it'll be hard to see which one's the actual next stitch to go into. So just keep trying to find the little V, and there's 3 parts of the chain, so that you know which one's the actual next correct stitch to go into. Some of them can pull really tight once you've worked into the first one, so it's hard to see where the next one is. You might accidentally skip a stitch. So if you get to the end of the row and you've been counting and you're short one, go along and check that you didn't miss one. Another tip is to count all your stitches all the time, but that is so tedious and makes it go slow. Or actually, as a beginner, it doesn't make it go slow, because if you're counting, you can catch your mistakes earlier instead of working for 3 hours and then ripping out your work, frogging it. Okay, so if I show you, okay, I could show you how to work into the different parts of the chain. So second chain from the hook. Let me give myself some more chains to work with. Whoop. See these chain stitches just blossoming out of thin air? I love this. Love crochet. Alright. So if we want to work in the bottom loop here, again with the single crochet stitches, what do? We go, we've got to poke the crochet hook into there. And then yarn round hook, got the 2 loops here, round hook, pull up loop, finish the crochet, single crochet. So see how it's twisted the chain so that it's hard for me to see where to go in next. But I think there he is. There's the next one right there. And you continue going along, work through that piece of yarn, and that will give you a different edge to your piece when you start. It might be useful for making a different shaped handle, strap, or an edge to a piece of clothing, or a tea towel, whatever you like. World's your oyster. All right, and then how else can you work into this chain? So versatile. I guess you can work into this top loop here. That's my favorite. That's my go-to method of doing it because it's the fastest. It's the easiest way to see those little top stitches there. There we go. There's another one. Next one. I'm trying to look at it through the camera instead of my actual hands, and it's kind of trippy. See how I've pulled that one tight, so that one went real small, so it's hard to see where to put my next stitch, but focus. There we go. It's a little pretzel. I'm going to put it in that dot, that little gap. You know, it's teeny tiny because it's been pulled tight. There we go. Next one. And then you can just continue along, working into that top V. And you can also work into the middle V, the middle bar, not the V. Forget the V, you can work into this middle bit, and that will give you another style. Oh. Come on. Some of these are fiddly, but you know, you get it eventually. Just practice. I don't usually work into this middle one. I don't know if that's right. Let's see what happens if I do whoop and whoop. Looks like a jumbled mess. But I guess I could keep going along, following that middle bar along each of these chains. Nah, I don't think I'm a fan of that style. Moving along. So, what do you do if you didn't want to do a single crochet for this row? Let me show you the other height stitches. When I say height stitches, I mean that each stitch gives a different shape or height. So each one will have a different function. Let me show you what I mean. I have one row of single crochet. I'm at the final stitch of the row and do a single crochet, and now what you do next depends on what stitch you want to do next. So if you want to do another single crochet row, do one chain, turn your work. Now you can work back along that row. So the reason I did one chain here, we call it a turning chain, one turning chain, is because one chain equals the height of one single crochet stitch. Now I can quite happily go along, and I'm going to work into that guy. So these nice little bumps, stitches, there's gaps where you're going to poke the crochet hook into and pull up a loop. So if you want to work back into the work, pull up a loop, single crochet, yada yada yada, continue on. And identify the next one. Make sure you go into, see the V stitches, they're easier to see now that there's a nice even single crochet row. So these, V for Vicky, no. So you want to go through both of those, unless the pattern tells you to go through the front loop or the back loop. I usually get this mixed up. Front loop and back loop. Yeah, the back loop at the back, front loop facing at the front. Okay. Right. But when I did this stitch here, I went through both of them. As you can see, both. Pull up a yarn round hook, pull up loop, yarn round hook, both loops. Single crochet. Single crochet in American. Sorry, I keep forgetting to tell you these guys. This is a double crochet in the UK or Australia. So if you're watching from Australia, well, you can use both terms. Depends on the pattern you're using. Okay, so I ripped out those single crochets, and I've got my chain stitch here still. The chain, okay, so the loop on the hook, that's not stitched yet, right? The chain is this one that's already been made. You can see his V's there. And there's my first single crochet. So you've got to make sure that you're identifying which stitch is which. You know how I said that we're working into the single crochets here, and that chain is a turning chain? Because it's a turning chain, we're not working into it. It's just the edge piece, see? It's just going to make the side. It's going to climb up the sides. So go into this loop, which is not yet a stitch. So I've only got one chain over. But if we want to do my favorite stitch, which is called a half double crochet in American, yes. Oh goodness. Okay, so which in English, in British terminology, it's called a half treble. So you go single crochet, double crochet, treble crochet, double treble crochet, treble treble, and etc. But you won't usually need to go further than treble treble. Well, I haven't anyway. I haven't seen anything fancier than that yet. Still a beginner. Anyway, all right. So we go for half double crochet or half treble, depending on what country you're in. We want 2 chains as the turning chain. So I've got 2 chains here. 2 chains. And then we want to go into the first single crochet. That's where we'll be working into. But before we poke the hook into that, we need to yarn round hook. And that makes the stitch taller. So yarn around the hook, then we go into the stitch, and then we yarn around hook, and then we pull up a loop, and now we've got 3 loops on our hook, and that's totally cool. What we're going to do next is the last step. Yarn round, hook, and pull through all 3 loops, and you are done. You do those all the way across, so they make a nice little stitch that sits about the height between a single crochet and a double crochet. That's why they call it a half double crochet in American. So, which means a double crochet, look, which it also will need 2 turning chain stitches, I think, pretty sure. So double crochet is yarn round, hook, go into the next stitch. Sorry, I'll show you how to identify it. So I've already worked into that one. You can see the stitch I've already done there. So I'll go into this one, that V shaped stitch, go through both of those, because my pattern that I've made up right now doesn't say to go in the back loop or the front loop only. So we'll go through both those. Sorry, I was just pushing. And pull up a loop, yarn round, hook, pull up a loop. You got the 3 loops. Since this is a double crochet in American, they call it a treble in UK. Now this is what I meant by sometimes it'll make sense in different, if you think of it in different ways. So the next step, yarn round, hook. We go through the first 2 loops only. Now we've got 2 loops left. Yarn round, hook, go through both those loops. Yes, did it. Okay, so that's a double crochet in the US, because you pull through, you do that motion twice, the 2 loops twice. But I think they call it a treble in the UK because you've got 3 stitches here. It's treble. Let me show you it again. Okay, well then in that case I'll show you what the US treble looks like, which is taller than the US double. So if this is called a UK treble, then I think the next is called a double treble. So a UK double treble, aka US treble, is yarn round, hook twice. Hey, I like this. All right, next we find the next stitch that we already worked into that one, see? So we'll go into this one, we'll find that V, we'll go through both of that V, but oh, sorry, I forgot to show you. See that center bar? See that's the center bar, the V center bar, same as the chain stitch has. I'm going into that space between the bar and the V. So I'm not going into the whole gap, that big gap. I'm going to do this little gap at the top, above that middle bar. And it's the V there, round, yarn round, hook, pull up a loop. Got to use the terminology if you're going to be in the crochet club. Now we've got 4 loops on our hook. We want a yarn round, hook, and we'll just go through 2 of them. All right, just like before, just through 2. Now we've got 3 loops. Yarn round, hook, pull up a loop. Now we've got 2 hooks. Yarn round, hook, pull up a loop, and you're done. So I call that a US treble stitch because you do that motion 3 times with the 2 hook, 2 loop, pull through 2 loops, pull through 2 loops, pull through 2 loops. Do that thrice. So this is a treble stitch. And as you can see, they're getting slightly taller and taller as we go along. How cute. So the reason that you would use different stitches is normally for different designs, different patterns, and my favorite use is for buttonholes. So I'll do a row of bigger stitches, or depending on how big the buttons I'm using are, so that I can just you can use that whole row as buttonholes, and then you sew buttons on the opposite edge. And that's usually how I make a pillow cover with a button enclosure. So all these stitches are very versatile. You can use it to make whatever types of patterns you like. But if you're making stuffed toys, mainly you'll be using the US single crochet. And that I'm gonna flip around. I can't flip around. Right, I get to talk to my face, not my hands. So the stuffed toy style of crochet with only single crochet, American single crochets all the way through, it's called amigurumi, I believe the pronunciation is. Really, I think it's a cute little word. But it just means it's the art of crocheting little crochet toys. So I hope you've enjoyed this video and learnt a lot. Please like and subscribe, I'd really appreciate it. And in the next video, we'll be learning how to start a crochet project for absolute beginners to crochet in a round. Because there's only so much you can do in rows back and forth. Of course, you can learn how to increase and decrease and all these other fancy things. But you know how useful it is to learn how to crochet in a round and make hats and doilies and coasters and cup holders. Oh, you'll be able to make so many things just by learning this little technique. Crochet isn't hard. It's just takes a bit of concentration at the start. And then once you've got it, muscle memory. It's easy as that. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. See you next time. Bye.